Good day, everyone. Today is another day of learning. But before anything else, I would like to ask each of you, Kamusta ka? How are you? I hope everyone is doing good today and may that feeling stays with you until the end of the week. To start with, is everyone eating adobo? I am sure that everyone does because it is a very delicious Filipino food. If in case you are going to remove at least one ingredient from this recipe, what would it be? I think nothing can be removed because adobo would be incomplete if at least one ingredient should be removed. Just like our topic today, the mighty cell, its types, organelles, and functions. Cells have different important ingredients that plays an important role in the different processes that makes an organism alive. Here are the learning objectives for today. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to distinguish prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells according to their distinguishing features, and describe the structure and function of the major and subcellular organelles. Cells, as we know, is the basic unit of life. Without it, living things is impossible. In our planet, the Earth, we are very blessed for the existence of different living organisms like plants, animals, and even you, and some small organisms like bacteria. And these living organisms are all made up of cells. We have two major types of cells that varies anatomically and physiologically. We have the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. The term prokaryote is derived from the Greek word pro, which means before, and karyon, which means kernel, and it translates to before nuclei. Prokaryotes are one of the most ancient groups of living organisms on Earth, with fossil records dating back to almost 3.5 billion years ago. Prokaryotic cells are comparatively smaller and much simpler than eukaryotic cells. The other defining characteristic of prokaryotic cells is that it does not have possessed membrane-bound organelles such as nucleus and mitochondria. Reproduction happens through the process of binary fission. While on the other hand, the term eukaryotes is derived from the Greek word eu, which means good or true, and karyon, which means kernel, and therefore translating to good or true nuclei. Eukaryotes are more complex and much larger than the prokaryotes. They include almost all the major kingdoms except Kingdom Monera. Structurally, these two major types of cells also have a big difference. Eukaryotic cells have more organelles compared to the eukaryotic cells. That proves that it is more complex to the latter. And to give a brief comparison of these two major types of cell, here is the table. Prokaryotes do not have nucleus, while eukaryotes have. Prokaryotes do not have membrane-bound organelles, while eukaryotes have. Prokaryotes ranges from 1 to 10 micrometer, while eukaryotes ranges from 2 to 1000 micrometer. And it is believed that prokaryotes evolved around 3.5 billion years ago, while eukaryotes evolved around 1.5 billion years ago. The best example of prokaryotes are bacteria, and they are considered to be unicellular, while eukaryotes, the best example for this are plant, animal, protists, and even fungi. Most of them are multicellular, but some of them are unicellular. Our next discussion is about the different cell structure and its function. Just like what we learned from the previous lesson, a cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all living organisms. According to the cell theory postulates, a cell is the basic building block of life, which makes anything alive and is self-sufficient to carry out all the fundamental functions of an organism. And cell is made up of different components that we call organelles. These are the small organs that we can find inside the cell that have a specific function. These organelles are membrane-bound and non-membrane-bound. The three major parts of the cell are plasma or cell membrane, cytoplasm, and nucleus. One of the major components of cell is the cell membrane, also known as plasma membrane. It is a double-layer thin barrier surrounding the cell to control the entry and exit of certain substances. It is like the gate and fences of your homes. It serves as the entrance and exit point. It gives mechanical shape, strength, and protection to the cell. It is composed primarily of phospholipids and contains proteins and polysaccharides. It is considered to be semi-permeable, meaning it is selective about which substances it allows through. In short, it regulates the entry and exit of substances into and outside of the cell. Cell membrane are both present in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. The second major organelle of the cell is the cytoplasm. It is the matrix for all the organelles. It is also the site for many biochemical reactions. It is like the ground or surface of your home. It is the protoplasm inside the cell but outside the cell. Organelles are all embedded in the cytoplasm, which performs specific function. This helps in the stability of the cell and contains semi-fluid translucent substance known as cytosol. In prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell, cytoplasm is always present. The third and the last major organelle of the cell is the nucleus. It is the control center of the cell and the largest among all organelles inside the cell. It is like the Capitol building of your city, meaning all information being disseminated to its people are all from there. It has nuclear membrane that envelopes the nucleus and protects the nucleolus, which is vital for ribosome production. It contains DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid. It determines the characteristics of the cell and directs the production of protein and cell division. Inside, there is a protoplasm called karyoplasm or nucleoplasm. In prokaryotic cell, nucleus is indefinite, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have genetic material. It has, but like ribosomes, it is free floating in the cytoplasm. On the case of eukaryotic cell, nucleus is always present. Aside from these major components of the cell, there are other important sub-organelles, like the cell wall. It is a rigid wall found in plant and bacterial cells, which lies outside the cell membrane. It is like additional brick wall in the case of plant cell that adds protection. In plant cell wall are composed of primarily cellulose, but in the case of bacterial cell wall are composed primarily of peptidoglycan. In prokaryotic cell wall is always present, but in the case of eukaryotic cell wall is only present in plant cell. We also have the chromosomes. Inside the nucleus, we can find these thread-like structures that bears the genes, which compose of nuclear DNA, the carriers of genetic information. It is like a messenger that delivers message from one place to another. Chromosomes are present both in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. But in prokaryotic cell, it is in the form of one long strand. The ribosome. It is a small spherical organelle considered to be the site for protein synthesis. Protein synthesis is a process where DNA produces RNA to manufacture proteins. It is usually attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum or free-floating in the cytoplasm. Proteins synthesized from attached ribosomes are released as enzymes. Proteins from attached ribosomes are for use within the cell. It is like a factory that produces the goods that are necessary for organism survival. Both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell have ribosome. We also have the endoplasmic reticulum. It is the passageway for the substances inside the cell. They are like highways that serves as roads for the transport of materials between various parts of the cytoplasm. We have two different types of endoplasmic reticulum. We have the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which have ribosomes. It is where modification of protein occurs, and it serves as the passageway of protein molecules. While the other one is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. It lacks ribosomes. It is involved in the synthesis of most of the lipids that make up the cell membrane and carbohydrates. Prokaryotic do not have endoplasmic reticulum, but eukaryotic cell have. The Golgi apparatus, also known as the Golgi bodies. It is a system of irregular network of canals. It is like your favorite product delivery hub that is responsible for the modification of proteins received from the endoplasmic reticulum. These proteins are then transported in vesicles around the cell. Also, its enzymes manufacture and attach carbohydrates to proteins or lipids, function actively in the synthesis and packaging of various chemical products of the cell. Prokaryotic cells do not have Golgi apparatus, while eukaryotic cells have. Next up is the amazing lysosome. It is considered to be the suicide bag of the cell because they are responsible for particles breaking down. It is like garbage collector that dispose irrelevant materials in the vicinity. White blood cells have many lysosomes that dispose bacteria. It contains digestive enzymes used to foreign bodies inside the cell. Thanks to lysosome that powers our immune system. In prokaryotic cell, lysosome is absent. But in the case of eukaryotic cell, they are commonly present in human cells. The energy provider, the mighty mitochondria. It is the powerhouse of the cell and the site for cellular respiration. If there are electricity providers in the cell, that is the mitochondria. ATP production is the main function of mitochondria. It provides energy to the cell because this organelle keeps or produces ATP or adenosine triphosphate, a high energy giving substance that needs by the cell for cellular processes. In prokaryotic cell, mitochondria is absent, but in the case of most eukaryotic cell, mitochondria is present. The centrioles. It is associated with the formation of spindle fibers during cell division. These are the enforcers that controls traffic during cell division. It is a non-membrane bound organelles found next to the nucleus of animal cells and some protists. They move chromosomes by forming fibers called spindle during cell division. It is sometimes called diplosomes because it is usually come in pair. And prokaryotic cell, centrioles are absent. But in the case of eukaryotic cells, they are always present. The cell's water provider, the vacuoles. It is the fluid-filled spaces found in both animal and plant cells. They are like water stations that supplies mostly water that is needed to most processes inside the cell. They are bigger in plant cell, which contains mainly of water and some mineral ions needed for photosynthesis. They are formed by the joining of many small vesicles and it doesn't have specific shape. In the case of prokaryotic cell, vacuoles is absent. But in the case of eukaryotic cell, specifically and plant cell, vacuoles are always present. In the case of plant cell, we have plastids, that's sometimes called as pigments, that is responsible for giving color to the cell. These are like painters that colors the cell. In prokaryotic cell, plastids are absent. But in the case of eukaryotic cell, specifically and plant cell, plastids are always present. And the most well-known plastid that most of plants in the planet have is the chloroplast. It is the plastids that contain the green pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs the light energy during photosynthesis. And all these organelles play a very important role in providing normal functioning of the cell. If one component is not functioning well, all other components will be affected. Some cell facts. 1. Cells are too small to be seen without magnification. That's why we need the mighty microscope. 2. Prokaryotic single-celled organisms are the earliest and most primitive forms of life on Earth. 3. There are more bacterial cells in the body than human cells. 4. Cells have varying lifespan. And lastly, cells commit suicide. For your activity today, I will send a separate instruction in our group chat. Please be guided accordingly. For your first performance task, we have activity number 3, Portrayal of Life's Origin. Instruction 1. Draw or illustrate the following. Eukaryotic cell, choose between animal or plant cell. Prokaryotic cell, so meaning you will be illustrating bacterial cell. 2. Label its parts and describe each of them. Please be very brief and concise with your description. 3. Answer the following questions. A. What makes an animal cell different from a plant cell? B. What is or are the role or roles of the prokaryotic cells in the existence of eukaryotic cells? C. How do prokaryotic cells survive in the absence of important organelles like mitochondria and nucleus? And lastly, be direct to the point with your answer. Citation is recommended to avoid plagiarism. And for the rubric for this performance task, please visit the TBL Hub. And please be guided accordingly. Thank you everyone for listening. And to end this, I would like to remind you that no dreams are big. You can always start small and end big. Small but consistent steps are the key to the success of your life dreams. Once again, good afternoon and God bless everyone.